Consider this. In 2008, the Peoria not-for-profit organization Look It's My Book began working with its first Peoria public grade school, providing books to children to call their very own. Now, almost 20 years later, Look It's My Book is in all 14 Peoria District 150 grade schools. Quite an accomplishment. You might think that that accomplishment was spurred on by a seasoned educator, but that's not the case. I'm Yvonne Greer. My guest is Janet Roth, founder of Look It's My Book. Next on Consider This. There are lots of studies that tout the importance of early reading for young children and being beneficial to them throughout the course of their lives. But one in particular suggests that up to 61% of children living in homes in poverty do not have a single book to call their own. And Look It's My Book is setting about to change those numbers. Janet Roth from Look It's My Book, welcome to Consider This.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So as I mentioned in the open, you might think that somebody who's really enthusiastic about providing books to kids has an educational background or in educational administration or something, but that's not the case for you.
No, actually it was after I retired. I was a district manager with Social Security in Springfield, and I was going to Learning and Retirement. I came across an article in Wired magazine about how we were falling behind in math and science and technology, and I took it to the head of Learning and Retirement. I said, look at this is terrible. And you know what happens when you open your mouth? He said, I have a committee for you. And they had been asked to study with 150 and Peoria Next and Renaissance Park whether or not we needed a Math Science Technology Academy. So I chaired the Why Committee. Why would we need that? And that's when I found out all this information that I didn't know at all. I thought we were #1 among developed countries. We're 27th. We produce fewer PhDs per 1,000 than even countries like Iceland. So that kind of bothered me. Well, it bothered a lot, actually. So we did our report. It went down the line, but I still was concerned about that. Then I read about 2 gals who gave 6 books a year in a lower socioeconomic district, and it went from underperforming to above the national norm. I thought, well, we could do that right here in Peoria. So I called my committee together and I bribed them with the lunch and I said, here's what I'd like to do. Would you help me? They said yes. So our goal was to add a school a year. We're at all the schools now and we're 7 years old. So,
and that is fantastic.
And it's wonderful because the kids get so excited about picking their books. We found that the biggest motivator for children to read is that there's something they're interested in. So we take a whole selection of books, much more labor intensive than just giving out one title, but it works. They pick out a book they want, they read, and one principal said in her 33 years of teaching, she's never seen a program have the impact on reading that Look It's My Book has had.
That's
awesome. So it's wonderful fun.
So let's talk about the logistics of how you made this work. So you called your committee together. Obviously you had some fundraising that went on, but how does that happen? So do you purchase the books? Do you get input from students and teachers? How do you start from scratch with, I need all of these books to give to children?
Well, we eventually established a book buying committee, and because of the poverty rate, we get our books about 80% off, so we get a lot of bang for the buck. We pay on average $2.60. But the most important thing is we're getting books that the children like. So we have primarily retired teachers on the book buying committee, one for each grade, and they pick out the books. We write grants to some, like First Books and Books for School, Scholastic, and sometimes we only have to pay shipping. But the teachers are telling us they love them. One little boy said, I don't know where you get your books, but keep getting them there because they're great. So I think we're doing okay.
All right. So then once you get all of these books, do you have a warehouse? Where do you store them before distribution? Actually,
we do have a warehouse, several warehouses. Of course, my home was the first one, but now we rent from First Federated Church, and we have 51,000 books in inventory right now because we give away over 40,000 books a year. So it's
So the books come in, and then what happens?
Oh, we put a label on them, and it says, look, it's my book, and they get to write their name right there. And they get that pride of ownership.
Yeah, I would imagine that that's a meaningful moment when you can write your name in the book and you don't have
Yes.
to return it someplace.
Right, and then they say, now I've got the green one and I want the blue one of Diary of a Wimpy Kid, or the Junie B. Jones series, or the Captain Underpants
Yes.
series, because they think they're a little naughty. So we have a captain and a team that goes to each of the schools. The times and dates are set up by the principal, so we're least intrusive as possible. And then the children come and pick.
That's
And
wonderful. So it's like going
really
to the
fun.
store and coming home with a book of your very own.
Right.
Do you find that they want to read the books again and again?
They write us wonderful thank you letters about, I read it to my brother, to my sister, to my cousin, to my grandma, to my aunt and uncle. The one said I read it to my sister, but she don't always listen to me. So yes, they read it again and again. They read it to their friends, and they're well used.
That is terrific.
So it's kind of like, we want children to read, we teach them to read at school, but if you taught somebody how to ride a bike and then you say go home and practice and there's no bike there at home, that's how it is with the books. They need to have books at home in order to be able to learn to read well. And learning to read well means they're going to be able to get a job. We're in a knowledge economy. You have to have an education. And not only that, there's a benefit to the community as well, because for every year of education, there's a decrease in crime of 1% to 2%. So what a fun and wonderful
win,
way
win,
to
and win
prevent
again.
crime.
Yes.
Have children be able to be successful, and that's why we say give a book, give a future. We think that's what we're doing.
What kind of comments have you received from teachers, or feedback have you received from teachers and administrators in the District 150 school system?
Wonderful. The last letter called our volunteers angels with bookmarks. And one principal, she was telling the kids, now what's going to happen today is you're going to get to pick a book and you're going to keep it forever. And the kids go, woo! So yes, they're telling us they love, the comments are consistent that we're just making a huge, huge impact.
And do you see that reflected in their learning skills and in their grades down the line as well?
Yes, and we don't have a national or measurement yet. We, of course, have what the principals are saying, and the scores in the lower grades are going up. But I'm going to see, there's a national study going on in a Chicago suburb that where they give books, and I'm going to see if we can become a part of that.
So where does this energy come from in you? You said that you were working for the Social Security Administration. A lot of us will see a story on the news, will read something in a newspaper or a magazine, but not a lot of us take that issue upon ourselves and decide to make a difference. Where is that born in you?
I guess my mom always volunteered, and I've volunteered all my life, but it just kind of happened. And what's been astonishing is how many people are willing to volunteer with us, and it's always fun. We have labeling parties where we put the labels in, and I fix little wine and hors d'oeuvres, and when the labels get crooked, we stop putting in the labels. So we have fun, and yet we think we're going to change this whole city.
That
It's
sounds like a
pretty
wonderful
exciting.
initiative. So what's next for Look, It's My Book? What's on the horizon?
Well, the next thing is to make sure we go on forever. So we are working on an endowment because, at some point, I'm going to check out. We're all going to check out. We started with old volunteers to begin with. So that is critical for our continuation. So we are working on that.
Are there any particular children that stand out in your mind? Of course, you don't have to give any names that you might have reached with the Look, It's My Book program that stay with you.
The one that stays with me the most is a little boy that said, I had no books. You don't know what this means to me. And I always get a little schmaltzy. But that's what we're doing for these kids. We're changing lives.
What would you say to someone who might be sitting on the fence and just watching us sitting at home in their living room thinking, maybe I could do something, maybe I could volunteer?
We would love to have people volunteer, and once they volunteer, I think they get hooked because they see how excited the children get. They know how important it is. In a knowledge economy, you can't get a job unless you're educated, and you have to be able to read. So, you know, what better things? You change the world, you have fun, you get to see kids, you know.
Lovely.
Yeah, and of course, we're only supported through donations, so we have to raise $140,000 a year, which is kind of scary, but so far so good.
But this is where those donations go. You've brought an array of books for us to take a look at, and I would imagine it would be really interesting for some folks who maybe don't have young kids of their own at home to see what is it that kids are interested in. Are some of the more popular books that you're giving away these days?
Yes, well, we also give, I didn't mention, we have some Spanish books because there's about 15% of the kids are Hispanic in the lower grades. And so we researched, should we just give English or should we give in Spanish? And the research shows that if they learn to read in their first language, they'll learn to read better in their second language. So we kind of researched and solved that dilemma. So, you know, we have like this little darling one with a panda in Spanish.
And Dr. Seuss, I'm glad to see he's still a favorite
Dr.
because
Seuss
Dr.
is
Seuss
still
I just
popular.
love.
Everybody loves Dr. Seuss. And one of the nice things, as I said, if they get a series, then they want the next one. So that's what you're trying to do, you know, pull them in and get them reading. And then the world opens up to them when they can read.
Now, I would imagine that other school districts may look at this program and say, well, that looks pretty good. How do we become involved in something like that? Is there an outreach program, or are other communities trying to model what you're doing, or are you trying to model what other communities are doing?
We have been approached by other communities, and we have said we will share everything we're doing. You can come sit in our board meetings. We'll show you the letters we use for fundraising. Any way that we can help you, we will. And so, for example, I know the Altrusa Club in Canton is starting small with just kindergarten and first grade. They were going to start with the older grades, but we told them what we had found out, that the youngest grades were the most important. So they made that change, and I think that's going well. And then they're going to take a look at expansion. We've been asked by other communities, and again, we're offering anything we've learned to help them. And we hope to be involved, as I said, in the national study. And I think when we have that kind of information, that will be very powerful in terms of us in our fundraising. And to me, that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I can see that. The kids that come in and choose their books, are they aware of everything that goes on, or do they just know, I'm getting a book and it's going to be all mine?
I think they just know they're getting a book and it's going to be all mine, but we know that there's some schools where they even recognize the volunteers' cars, and they'll say, oh, look, it's my book, people are coming to school today. And we have shirts, and we give bookmarks, and our bookmarks, actually, some of these children didn't know how to use a bookmark. They didn't know what it was for. But if you think you didn't have a book, why would you know about a bookmark? Yeah. But they love to see us come, and it's so much fun.
Do you hear from the parents?
No, not really. But I'm not sure that they know about us because we work directly with the schools. We did apply to be. We didn't want to just adopt the school. We applied to adopt the whole district because we were optimistic, and we made it.
Hooray!
So, yeah.
And so it's K through 4, correct?
Yes, yes.
And what do you see as some of the differences as the kids move through the age levels in their level of interest in having a book? Does it build from year to year? Do you find that the younger kids are much more eager than the older kids?
It builds from year to year. It's kind of fun. We get requests, you know, I would like more of this or more of that. And they also tell us, I'm reading chapter books now. Well, chapter books are harder than just a book, you know, with the pictures. So, yes, they start to build on their interest, and they especially kind of like things that might be a little naughty. So some of the titles will persuade them to read the book the first time, as we said, Captain Underpants or something like that.
Yeah, and when you say naughty, we should probably clarify. You don't mean naughty.
No.
You mean like, bodily function humor for a grade school child.
Right. They're all approved books. Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. I don't want to get in trouble with it. You're right.
So you're a mom yourself.
Yes.
As you look back over the course of your mothering years for your children when they were in school, and you look at these children that you're still sort of mothering today, is there something that you wish that you had today that you had given your own kids, or do you bring the experiences that you had growing up to the children of today?
I guess if I would say anything, I would say I would read to my children more, as I found out how incredibly important it is. Now my children are doing well, so it's not, I'm not worried about them. I'm very proud of them. But once you find out how important reading is, then you say, oh, I wish I'd have read more to my children. In fact, I have grandchildren now, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. So I'm talking to my son who lives in New York about maybe Skyping and reading to my granddaughter. And my 6-year-old granddaughter is in kindergarten, first grade, and she's reading at 4th grade level. So I don't have to worry about reading to her.
And to the parents, I would imagine that it is challenging. When we started this show, I was talking about that stat that 61% of kids who live at or below poverty don't have books of their own at home.
Right.
And in Peoria District 150, as we know, more than 2/3 of the kids in the school district are living at that at or below poverty level. So I would imagine this is hugely pivotal for them to have 6 books a year coming into the home. And to the parents that are doing their best to make a difference and put food on the table and get the kids to school every day, any words of encouragement or suggestions for them as these books come into the home and making sure that the legacy continues for these children and that they do get off on the right foot, so to speak?
I guess one of the things I would say when you read to them, ask them questions, especially the littlest ones, like, what do you think is going to come next? Was that a good thing or a bad thing that they did? Ask them things about the book so that they think about it. And again, it opens up so many things. I mean, like animals, we kind of take for granted when you live in the city that everybody knows about nature and animals and all those things, but the city children don't. So, you can talk about the animals that are in the books and how do you think they are taken care of? What do you think they eat? And those kinds of things. So anything that you can do to make your child think about what's going on in the book, maybe anticipating what's coming next, those are the things that will get them hooked. And once they get hooked on reading, then Katie barred the door. They're going to be able to just take off. We know they're going to be successful, and that's what every parent wants for their child, I think.
And I saw you once talk about using other avenues to encourage reading, and one of them was recipes. I thought, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. Would you expand on that?
Yeah, well, kids, especially the younger kids, like to help a lot. So if you say, well, what should we make? And you flip through a cookbook, and of course, many of them have pictures, so then they can pick out a picture that they like, and then here's how we make it, and would you read that recipe to me, and let's make it together. And those kinds of things, not only do they teach the child to read, but they're memories you hold forever.
Yeah. They'll never make Rice Krispie treats the same again.
You're right.
So what is the distribution like? Do you go certain months of the year? Is that determined by the school? Is that determined by your committees?
Yeah, we ask each principal to tell us what's the best day and what's the best time. And then we have an awful lot of books that we lug from our warehouse to the school. So our volunteers will carry boxes of books. We use those banker boxes that have handles. We've learned, not to use all different sizes. And so we'll take those in. We take 30% more than we're going to give away, so that even the last children that come in will still have choice, since that's the key element in the success of the program. So,
You've received many, many awards for the Look It's My Book program. Leadership awards, a proclamation from Peoria Mayor Jim Ardis. How does that make you feel?
well, of course, I'm thrilled, but mainly I'm happy because then people will learn about the program and volunteer and support us. So I guess that's a terrible thing to say.
No, that's a wonderful thing to say. You want to see the program continue.
Right, right. That's what we're all working for.
So if I'm watching and I want to be a volunteer, what are my avenues to help?
Okay. Well, you can help with the labeling. And as I say, I try and make that fun. We try and make it all fun. We also have the group we call the Stackers and Packers that work in the warehouse. So when our books come in, we have rows by grades where we shelve them. And then when we're packing for a school, we know how many children are in each grade. So we'll pack those grades and the surplus. And we track all the books so that we know which ones are popular, which ones are no-goes, you know.
Don't bring that book back here
That's
again.
right. And then we've also started to work on what's called the summer slide. Poor children lose competency over the summer because they're not going on vacation, they're not going to camp, you know, they don't have the books in the home. So we wanted to target giving them books, and that's a little more difficult because there's not one place where you could go and get them. So we found like 19 different distribution points, and we went 32 times to those this summer to give books for the summer, because they found that if the children read 6 books over the summer, they don't suffer the summer slide, and even better, 10% of them actually gain.
That's wonderful.
So that's probably one of our biggest challenges that we're working on. How do we want to make sure that they get even better?
And keep reading during those
Yes,
summer months when
yes.
it's really easy to just
Yes.
play video games all day long.
Exactly, exactly.
So back to the volunteering. So they are labelers, stackers and packers,
Right.
and then they can distribute to the schools, or do the
Right.
stackers and packers do the distribution?
No, then every school has a captain and a team that do the actual distribution. So they'll take the boxes that the stackers and packers have put together for that school, and we have shelving with the names of all the schools that we pack, so we'll pack ahead of time. So we take those boxes in, the school sets up a kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade table, and we put all the books out, and then, of course, because we take an extra, then we will gather up what's not taken, and we will check off on our inventory what books we have left, so we know how many of which books were taken.
And all the books are new, so you don't
All
want
the
people
books are
offering
new.
you
That's
used
right.
books, correct?
That's right. I mean, it's so hard to tell somebody no on
Yes.
used books because you know their heart's in the right place. But one of the messages we're trying to convey to these children is you are important enough to get new books. And later, after they learn to read, they'll read anything.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I will read anything. But when we're first trying to instill that love of reading and make them proud of the ability to read and let them take advantage of what avenues open up for them, we want them to do it with the new books.
That is fantastic. Janet Roth, Look It's My Book. Thank you so very much for spending some time with us on Consider This, and congratulations for a wonderful organization. To go
thank
from
you.
2008 having just one public school that you were working with to now 14 K through 4th grade children, everybody getting a book 6 times over the year is a remarkable accomplishment. I applaud your
Thank
efforts,
you.
and I thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And I am grateful to you for being with us on Consider This, and we will see you next time.